The Trilogy Podcast with Vin and Scott. 3 movies, 2 men, 1 podcast.
I like New York in June. How about you? I like a Gershwin tune. How about you?
This kind of a song warms my heart. It's June. Things are finally getting back to normal here in New York.
What do you mean, back to normal?
What are you talking about, Scott?
People are still living under stay-at-home orders or coronavirus, and
Scott, these
cops are beating people in the street.
Okay.
I mean, there's protests. There's been
Okay,
the
Scott.
National Guard.
I like New York in June.
This June?
Not in general. In June. I'm not.
I don't know. I just think it's.
Scott, the world outside might be confusing, but here, we're the Trilogy Podcast. The only podcast in the universe devoted strictly to trilogies. No reboots, no straight to cable or video. We're bringing you facts, debate, trivia, and more. To hell with the movie, if they made 4.
Yes.
I'm Vin.
I'm Scott.
And here we are. I'm trying to be positive. You're negative as all hell.
I'm sorry. There's a lot of negativity. So it seeps in sometimes.
When you have a trilogy that's named the way this one is, you have to feel positive. Scott, it's what?
Terry Gilliam's Americana trilogy.
The Fisher King, 12 Monkeys, and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Yes.
Okay, so that's America for you. I guess Americana was ironic when you and I decided on it this time around, no?
Sort of, but I think there are things that definitely connect to our current period of time.
No, the Fisher King has to do with the Holy Grail, and we just dealt with the Grail in our last episode in the Robert Langdon trilogy, so that's something.
One is a cup, one is not a cup.
But the word Grail is used.
It's the same item.
Also, recently, we always comb through our master list of trilogies, and we added a lot of directors' trilogies, a very specific kind of trilogy. Scott, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yes.
We should probably let Trilogy Bot, our robotic friend, we should probably let him explain exactly what a director's trilogy is. It's a very, very unique trilogy in our world.
Yeah, I'm just going to hold my hands over my ears for this entire portion.
You do that.
I will.
Terry Gilliam's Americana trilogy is a director's trilogy. These unique trilogies involve 3 films, often with different plots and characters, that are linked through a common director, and very strongly reflect his themes and style. P.S. If you're covering your ears right now, you are a douchebag.
He's a son of a bitch!
I have no idea what you're talking about because I didn't listen to a word of that.
Should I be the one to remind you what a director's trilogy is then?
I think I got it.
When you have a director's trilogy, Scott, is they're connected usually by the style of that director, the themes, and often the circumstance. And by circumstance, I mean with Terry Gilliam, he made 2 consecutive trilogies. His first 3 films after Monty Python's Holy Grail, he considers his Imagination trilogy. And that's going to be Time Bandits, Brazil, and The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Right.
Now, for our purposes, we don't even consider that a valid trilogy. 2 of those films, Brazil and Munchausen, didn't get a wide release. His next 3 films were his first 3 and only 3 American films. And he considers that his Americana trilogy. The difference between the first trilogy and this trilogy is that first one is very surreal and involves a lot of supernatural elements.
Right.
Whereas the American trilogy, he says himself, is more grounded in reality.
Right.
And I think
still pretty surreal at moments, but
well, we see it through the mind of characters that have mental illness. That's
right.
That's the framework that he's giving it in this American trilogy. And we also have to mention that this is based on other people's work. The Imagination trilogy, he had a hand in writing all 3 of those films.
Right.
These, he's going with someone else's screenplay, someone else's story. Usually the director himself deems 3 of his films to be a trilogy for whatever reason. And that's the case here. He said in multiple interviews that he considers these 6 films to be a set of 2 trilogies.
It's not a trilogy of sequels. They're independent, so it's going to be kind of interesting, too, with the plot.
Are you ready to rock into your plot?
I am ready.
All right, I can't wait because after fucking Robert Langdon, and all that heavy-duty plot business, anything will be a relief.
Well, you're in luck.
Okay, so I cannot wait to hear this. Just jump into it. Fuck it. Just jump into it.
Do we ever do anything else? Come on.
Well, sometimes, but
What do you mean?
Nothing. Go.
Okay, so these are the plots, and what I do here is a Scott's plots. Scott's plots. Scott's plots are nice. Scott's plots with rice.
What?
Scott's plots are nice.
Jesus.
I'm running out of ideas.
I don't even know. I wondered what kind of a song you were going to connect to these 3 films.
I went with something weird.
Give us some plots.
Not my best. Okay, what I do here is I just give you the general sense of the plots of the movies, no character names, very no frills, just kind of get to the point. So if you haven't seen the movies in a while, this is a good refresher, and if you don't care to ever watch the movies, then I got you covered. The Americana trilogy begins with The Fisher King.
1991.
In New York, a popular radio DJ gives bad advice to a caller who goes out and shoots up a Chinese restaurant, ending the DJ's meteoric rise.
This is obviously Howard Stern, and Howard Stern has just told Fred the Elephant Boy some crazy shit on the radio, and one of the whack pack has murdered a bunch of people.
Oh, yeah,
Right?
for sure. For the time, absolutely.
That's also a throwback to that dude from Talk Radio, I think, as well. The idea
Yes.
of provoking people and getting direct action from your audience.
3 years later, the radio DJ is a drunk, working at a video store and dating the owner of the video store, but is still tormented by the guilt of causing the shooting.
Stop making me laugh.
Sorry.
You made me laugh when you said shooting.
While attempting suicide, the radio DJ is attacked by some frattish-looking white guys, but quickly saved by a delusional homeless guy who believes he is a servant of God searching for the Holy Grail, and that the radio DJ is the chosen one to help him find it.
In the first of many inexplicable scenes in this film, the Trump youth apparently is traveling around New York lighting on fire homeless people.
Yeah.
They seem to be stalking the homeless people of New York.
Yeah. There are things in this movie, and I think all of Terry Gilliam's movies, where you go, do these people exist, or did you just make this up?
I'm going to say it once, and you're going to hear me say it through this whole podcast. Terry Gilliam is only concerned about the picture and the art of what we're looking
Right.
at. He lets the actors just kind of do whatever they want. So you get this insane scene where Robin Williams is singing, homeless people are dressed up. They're choreographed.
Oh, yeah.
They're choreographed. One's standing, one's kneeling. It's a balanced picture, for God's sake.
Yeah. But it's perfect Terry Gilliam.
I think at times he lets actors just go and go.
Well,
go.
He certainly let Rob Williams
Go.
do whatever he wants.
This is the wrong kind of
He's
actor for
adding
this.
in jokes. He's improvising. He's ad-libbing. Yeah.
So
The DJ discovers that the homeless man's wife was one of the people killed during the shooting at the Chinese restaurant, and that this caused the homeless man to have a mental break, go into a state of catatonia, and emerge as the servant of God who is haunted by a fiery soldier on horseback, a representation of his inability to accept reality.
okay, come on. That's not a part of the plot. You're analyzing stuff there.
I threw it in analyze.
How dare you? I wrote that down later as a deep analysis that I figured out, and you're just going to drop it so casually
I mean,
here?
it's clear. Every time they talk about it, he's like, what happened with your wife? He's like, oh, no, he's here. It's pretty obviously.
Can't believe you just did that. Okay.
I mean, you tried to make it make sense in the context of the plot. The DJ decides to help the homeless man by setting him up with a woman that the homeless man is in love with and has been following.
So we just basically forget about the Grail then for a solid hour of the movie.
Yeah, it's kind of abrupt that just like, and I'm following her. This has nothing to do with me being my psychosis. This is just me wanting to bang her.
Yeah. And that her is Amanda Plummer. I'd rather have the cup.
I mean, it makes sense with their characters, you know what I mean? That they like, oh, she's kind of a lonely weirdo. He's kind of a
guess
fucked
so.
up, lonely weirdo.
I mean, if a homeless guy's got to stalk someone that might have the chance of also falling for him, it's going to be Amanda Plummer.
Yeah. The DJ and his girlfriend, the video store owner, get the woman the homeless man is in love with to come to the video store and later to the girlfriend's apartment to have her nails done. There, the DJ and his girlfriend convince the woman to join them and the homeless man, now cleaned up and wearing a suit, for dinner.
I mean, hardly a suit. They really half-assed the whole makeover of Robin Williams in this film.
Yeah.
Even when they put the video store shirt on him, they leave his dirty filth homeless shirt on underneath. take off this shirt.
Oh, yeah. That's what at that point I was like, why didn't you clean him up? And I was like, oh, because you're doing the dinner scene later. So you wanted to save the cleanup scene for later.
Even
in
then,
the movie.
that suit doesn't fit, and the lady staples it to him.
No, it looks like he borrowed it from David Byrne. Like, it's fucking crazy.
That's exactly what You may ask yourself,
how did I get here? My wife got shot. Water flowing under. The homeless man and the woman hit it off, and he walks her home, confessing his love for her. All seems to be well until the fiery soldier on horseback appears and chases the homeless man back to where he first met the DJ. There, he is stabbed and beaten by those frattish-looking white guys, sending the homeless man back into a state of catatonia.
Whenever the plot requires a homeless person to take an ass kicking,
It's got to be right there.
the Trump guys just roll right in and they're like, oh, a homeless guy. How dare you be homeless, you lazy asshole. We should just light you on fire.
Yeah. We're tired of looking at you. I don't know. I could see it. I could see.
Maybe just don't give him a quarter. Just keep walking.
I could see some, kids from Phil's hometown being like, my dad said that all homeless people need to be spit on and pissed on. Like, what? Why? Because I'm hateful. That's why. The DJ goes back to work at the radio station and his career rebounds. But he still feels guilty about the homeless man.
The swing here is ridiculous. The fact that he's humanized and as soon as he finds a tiny bit of success, radically swings right back to being a son of a bitch.
I think it's a little more realistic, though, because change, it's not like everyone has the Scrooge overnight realization, I think change is in increments. In a way.
That's a good point.
It feels false in the movie, but I think it's actually because it's a little more realistic.
What you're describing is realistic, but the way they do it in the movie, the way they set it up, gives it this false around the edges kind of a feel.
Yeah.
So you make a good point,
It feels weird where you're like, why are we resetting just to go right back to where we were? That we're going back there. He's coming back and he's going to help him and all that.
And what it does is it also in a way cheapens all of the interactions he's had with Parry, Robin Williams, up until that point. Because then it's like, oh, I was just using you because of my guilt. And now that my guilt is
assuaged,
everything's fine. Everything's back to status quo.
Well, he says at the beginning of the movie, there's a line. He's like, I just wish I could, pay the ticket and go home.
Yeah.
The DJ decides to steal the holy grail for the homeless man. I did air quotes there, just so you guys know.
I saw him.
Which in reality is a trophy in a rich guy's building.
While he's there, the rich guy is having an overdose.
Yes, I specifically am not mentioning it because it's so unimportant to the
I
movie.
have to mention it because
I'm baffled. Oh, it would have been mentioned.
He has an overdose and then it's never brought up again.
I'm baffled as to why that happens. Do you know what the location of that castle-y building is?
It's clearly not anyone's home that has ever existed. And I feel like I've passed it on the east side. I turned to Amy and I was like, is that the New York garbage depot right there? With those red bricks?
That's why for some reason I'm like, I feel like that's a completely different city in like Canada or
something.
something.
Salvage yard.
Yeah.
I think you passed that on the FDR.
Yeah.
It's not a home.
The DJ brings the homeless man the cup, who awakens from his catatonia, presumably cured of his insanity.
And Bridges learns a valuable lesson about himself and the kind of person he should be.
He learns to enjoy being naked in Central Park.
June. We're back in Central Park. We're getting naked.
Well, no.
We might not be in Central Park. We might be in a dystopian future where we're forced to go back in time.
Which perfectly segues into 12 Monkeys.
1995.
In the future, Earth has been ravaged by a virus, and the survivors are forced to live underground while animals roam the earth. A group of scientists decide to send a prisoner who is haunted by a childhood memory of a man being shot at an airport back to 1996 to collect information on a mysterious group who released the virus.
It's sort of Bruce Willis light, slow Bruce Willis, where he's kind of doofy and
I actually read that Terry Gilliam had a list of Bruce Willis isms that he was like, you're not allowed to do this.
I read that too. I'm surprised Bruce let him get away with that.
Yeah. He also did, he did this movie for practically free.
Yeah.
Too.
Yep.
But when the prisoner arrives in 1990.
Damn it!
Talking about viruses, he is arrested and sent to a mental institution to be put under the care of a psychiatrist. Yes, total fuck up on their part.
Are bad.
Sorry. The 6 looked like a 0. I'm sorry.
Yet another trilogy
time travel.
That involves time travel. Although I'm not going to lie to you, Scott, I accepted it in this film. It made sense to me. It wasn't confusing. And the whole movie was about the dynamic of time travel. It wasn't just slapped on to make a plot convention work or to make something fit. This was the nuts and bolts of it. And I think they handled it pretty well, all things considered.
Well, I think time travel usually, in movies always falls into a couple of categories. There's either like, if you change it, it changes immediately. Or there's the kind of like, it's sort of set in stone. Everything that you will do has already happened.
And there's different timelines, that notion.
Yeah. And I always prefer this kind of time travel story, where it's sort of time travel is not really going to help you fix the problem.
Even, I guess, this board of review, this bunch of scientists that send Bruce Willis back, even they acknowledge it. They say, we know we can't stop the virus from happening.
Right.
We just want to find out about it, want you to find out about it so we can cure it now.
As you watch the movie, you do feel like they're going to stop it, even though it's been stated by Bruce Willis, too, several times that there's nothing you can do to change it.
But yet no one really explains why. Why can't you stop it? The guy's right there. Stop it. Stop it.
Well, because as we find out later, it's all, That's another thing I think is a hallmark of all three of these is we have sort of the unreliable narrator throughout all these movies.
Good point.
Sort of, it does give you a sense of confusion through all these movies.
Sure.
At the mental institution, the prisoner meets a deranged young man who shouts about corporations and the environment and helps the prisoner try to escape the mental institution. The prisoner escapes the mental institution, but is quickly captured and locked in a cell, but disappears moments later. Back to the future.
How dare you?
I what's funny is I just wrote it that way and then laughed. Was like I phrased it. He goes back to the future. You got to acknowledge it.
Okay.
The scientists question the prisoner, who tells them they sent him to the wrong time. They also show him photos of people who may be involved with the mysterious group, one of which is the deranged young man from the mental institution. The scientists give him a second chance and try to send the prisoner to 1996, but instead send him to World War I.
Damn.
The prisoner gets shot in the leg and sees a friend of his who was also sent back in time. Meanwhile, in 19...
Love when you do your meanwhiles.
Meanwhile, in 1996, the psychiatrist from earlier gives a lecture where she has a strange encounter with an odd man, and afterwards, she is kidnapped by the prisoner, who tells her to drive him to Philadelphia.
So after the fuck-up where they send the prisoner to World War I, they then send him to...
1996.
Right, all right. So that's
they finally get it right.
That's the third time travel there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And basically the only reason they fuck up that World War I is to give her some kind of evidence to believe him later on that he isn't crazy, that he really is a time traveler.
Right. You're literally holding evidence in your hand.
This bullet is from...
Yeah. And then just for good measure, a photo.
That photo, it looks like he's bald and naked. It looks like he's crawling out of a grave. It's disgusting.
The first time he goes back to Baltimore, he's in a big see-through like raincoat thing that is part of the time travel process.
Yeah.
And in the second one, he's completely naked when he goes to World War I. To quote, I don't know, they ever give that character a name, but science isn't exact science or some shit.
Right. The narrator that...
I always refer to him as Bob, but that's just because that's what he calls Bruce Willis.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He keeps, hey, Bob. And he's like, I'm not Bob. I don't know. What are you talking about?
I just think that's Bruce Willis's inner monologue almost.
Yeah.
That's what it's supposed to represent.
All of these movies really play with that perception of like reality of like what is real, what isn't real. You know what I mean?
I mean, again, like you said before, the idea of just a narrator that we can't trust.
Right. In Philadelphia, the prisoner kills a couple of guys in an old theater, then interrogates some friends of the deranged young man, who confirm that the deranged young man is behind the mysterious group. The prisoner puts the psychiatrist in the trunk of a car and goes to confront the deranged young man, who is out of the mental institution and at his rich virologist's father's house.
He was really very mentally ill. Like, he shouldn't be released.
Oh,
you know.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of like an undertone of the movie too. Is that, well, if you have a rich family, you can get out, but there are people who are poor who are going to be in a mental institution the rest of their fucking life because they don't have daddy with deep pockets.
Or is Brad Pitt simply able to unfocus one of his eyes and look kind of weird?
He's wearing contacts.
You think you know so much? Just keep going.
I looked it up.
Just keep going.
Because he's got blue eyes in reality. So he wore brown contacts, and one of them is slightly off kilter than the other one. When confronted by the prisoner, the deranged young man denies any involvement, insisting the virus idea was the prisoner's. The prisoner is chased by security back to the car, where he lets out the psychiatrist, jumps in a puddle, and disappears. Back to the future!
Yeah, it's around this time we get the idea of the whole Terminator paradox and how events from the future affect events from the present.
Right. I always find is if you set the rules and play by them, the movie will be fine. But there are a lot of time travel movies that will set their own rules and then break them immediately.
We've discussed this before, the idea of the rules in time travel and how they're sometimes disregarded and other times followed to varying effects.
Yeah.
You know.
I believe this is also sort of how, I forget what they call it in Harry Potter, that it's basically like you can't change things, you can just go back and look. But the thing is, you've always gone back and looked. That's why they say, like, there's no way we're ever going to invent time travel because we would have met time travelers already. In the future, the prisoner begins to believe he is crazy and the scientists are all in his head, but plays along to be sent back to 1996. When the prisoner arrives in 1996, the psychiatrist proves he's not crazy by showing the prisoner a World War I photo of himself and his friend.
This was a baffling part of the movie where it really started to get confusing for me. As soon as she's finally on board and realizes what's happening, he's like, no, I'm just crazy. What? Does he really believe that suddenly? Or is he just saying that so that he can stay in 1996 or whatever? I don't understand why Bruce Willis swings so dramatically there.
I think it's because the last thing he does before he gets sent back is he talks to Brad Pitt. And Brad Pitt tells him, hey, that was all your idea. And I think he starts to question of like, did I make this whole thing up? Am I really just a crazy person screaming about a thing that's not real?
So you think he genuinely believes it?
Yeah. And it plays with the idea of like, who is crazy? What is crazy?
She's finally convinced. He's like, no, I'm crazy. And she's like, okay, you must be crazy then. I'm wrong. Fuck it. Let's just go to the Florida Keys and hope for the best.
Yeah.
You're about to explain how this little deception. Go ahead.
The psychiatrist and the prisoner decide to disguise themselves and flee to the Florida Keys. On the way to the airport, they learn the mysterious group led by the deranged young man has released all the animals from the zoo and were not behind the virus. When they arrive at the airport, the prisoner makes a phone call back to the future.
Ridiculous.
I had to get one more in there. Come
All
on.
right.
Rule of threes, everybody. Come
All
on.
right.
To tell the scientist that he is not coming back. Moments later, the prisoner's friend from earlier arrives and gives the prisoner a gun. The psychiatrist recognizes the odd man from earlier and discovers he's a scientist at the deranged young man's father's lab, and that the odd man is the one who releases the virus. The prisoner runs through a security checkpoint, and just before he can shoot the odd man, he is gunned down by police. It is revealed that the man the prisoner saw being shot as a child was in fact himself. The odd man gets on the plane and sits next to one of the scientists from the future, which I don't know what that really confirms or tells us.
Scott, I don't understand it.
Well,
she says she references being the insurance. She's an insurance.
I'm
So,
an insurance or whatever.
am I to believe that they've sent her in case Bruce Willis failed to get the necessary information they need that he was trying to get the whole time? Or that she was evil and somehow was preventing Bruce Willis from succeeding, like she didn't want him to shoot the guy?
Right.
It's needlessly
like,
confusing.
Is she ensuring that the virus happens?
Exactly.
Or is this her, she's going to like stick him in the neck and steal his,
And if that's the case, why send Bruce Willis back in the first place? If you knew you were sending him to a situation where he couldn't possibly succeed, where he's going to be handed a gun at the terminal of an airport.
Right.
It's weird.
I think she is ensuring that the virus happens. To what end? I'm not entirely sure.
There's no question there's a nefariousness about them that they're not on the level, and there's a weird evilness about the scientists
and what their intentions
and their
are.
motives. But overall, hey, you ready to do the last one?
Yeah. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
1998.
In the 70s, a journalist and his lawyer are speeding across the desert under the influence of and in possession of many different drugs.
And you could just stop right there. We could be done with the plots right now.
end.
And that's it. Honestly, there's nothing else.
They pick up a hitchhiker, and the journalist tells him that he's been assigned to report on a motorcycle race in Las Vegas. But the journalist and the lawyer's behavior scare the hitchhiker, and he runs away.
Yep, this has nothing to do with anything.
It was simply a storytelling device.
Yep.
Just give you a little background of why are we watching these guys go through the desert?
And still, unless you have familiarity with Fear and Loathing,
Yeah.
you still don't necessarily know what's going on. You can't understand what anyone's saying, so it doesn't really matter. They could be saying anything.
I think, it's definitely meant to be sort of, they're already in the pace of action.
Well,
And
maybe you hear the words Mint 300 or whatever the name of the race is.
Mint 400.
Mint 400, but you still don't really have a sense of.
No.
The focus is really the bats over and over again here.
The journalist takes a hit of acid that kicks in just as they arrive at their hotel in Las Vegas, and the journalist struggles to check in and hallucinates a lizard orgy. The next day, the journalist and his photographer go out in a Jeep to cover the motorcycle race, and the journalist thinks he's in a war zone, so he fires the photographer and leaves.
Something that could be interesting. A big rally like this, the very reason they've sent him to Vegas, immediately rendered uninteresting and stupid. Thank you, movie.
Are you sure you're a journalist? Like, you're not covering anything. Later, the journalist and the lawyer eat mescaline and huff ether and go to a circus-themed casino, but it freaks out the lawyer, so they leave. After returning to the hotel room from the casino, the journalist finds the lawyer has taken way too much acid and is in the bath and keeps trying to bring the tape player in the tub. The journalist ends up taking the tape player and locking the lawyer in the bathroom. The journalist then flashes back to a time in the 60s when he spilt acid on his shirt and some other hippie licked it off him while a square in a suit watched.
Various cameo performances.
Specifically, in that scene, you have Trilogy superstar Flea licking that stuff off his shirt.
And Lyle Lovett, in addition to Hunter S. Thompson himself.
Yes, which is like a very obvious, even if you had no idea, you'd be like, that has to be the real guy, right?
Right, so.
They do it in a very
Let's
obvious
not pretend
way,
this is a plot. It's a flashback to the 60s where, again, nothing at all happens.
I think it's a reflection on the hippie culture, and I think that's kind of what the movie becomes in trying to find that American dream sort of thing. So I think there's definitely, there's a story. There's a reason the story is being told, but there is quite a bit of just real time just going, here's what I did. And it happened to be a shit ton of drugs.
Yeah, well.
The next morning, the journalist wakes to find his lawyer has gone back to LA and left a huge hotel bill. Having no money, the journalist jumps in the car and tries to hightail it back to LA, but he is pulled over in the desert, and the cop advises he take a nap at the next rest stop.
For Christ's sake, it's Gary Busey, but you're delighted to see him because at least someone is saying something that you can understand. When Gary Busey is the most articulate person in your movie, there's a problem.
Yeah.
The guy's speaking through fucking doors in his mouth.
Fucking teeth like bay windows.
Serious.
It's one of my favorite.
And that's Gary Busey. Don't pretend that's Gary Busey playing a cop. That's Gary Busey.
I don't think he was hired for the film. I think he pulled up and was like.
They probably told Gary Busey he was playing himself. They're like, it's you're playing you in a cop uniform.
As a cop, yeah.
That's a good idea. I think I will do it that way.
I do like the part where he asked him for a kiss because I'm like, did any of that just happen? The journalist calls the lawyer and discovers that the lawyer got him a room at another hotel, and the journalist is now covering a police convention on narcotics. Apropos.
Yeah, perfect.
Much more apropos than the bike race that he had to go.
Why are you saying apropos that way? Apropos.
Apropos. I'm intercontinental, so apropos.
I'm sorry. I doubted you.
The journalist arrives at the hotel and finds the lawyer with an underage girl high on LSD, and the journalist quickly convinces the lawyer to dump her in a different hotel before the acid wears off.
Don't say quickly. They have a long, meaningless conversation in the hallway where he's trying to get her to leave.
It's a cameo. It's essentially a no-line cameo.
We need to get back to where we were before. Two fucked up guys wandering around.
The Hangover is similar. Guys going back and trying to fix their mistakes and making more mistakes, and you know what I mean?
This movie makes The Hangover look like Citizen Kane. Go ahead.
That's insanity. You're the one on drugs. The journalist and the lawyer go to the police convention and snort cocaine while listening to a ridiculous presentation on drugs. Back at the hotel room, the underage girl calls and the lawyer pretends that men have kicked in the door and are beating him, so she will stay away. Meanwhile, the journalist has taken way too much adrenochrome and blacks out. The journalist wakes to find the hotel room trashed, and listens to recordings on his tape recorder to piece together what happened. While listening to the recordings, the journalist recalls memories of trying to buy an orangutan, him and the lawyer pretending to be cops to scare a maid, smashing their own car, and the lawyer propositioning and then threatening a diner waitress.
That's a disgraceful scene. Poor Ellen Barkin is acting her heart out, taking this movie seriously, and it's a throwaway.
Of all the cameos, I think it's the best cameo because it's a real fucking scene. It's not just a cameo of someone saying a couple of lines and bye.
No, you're right, though, but it's an island adrift in a puddle of meaninglessness.
I think the movie is supposed to show you it's sort of the selfishness, although hippies, you know, do acid all the time, preach about being togetherness and all this shit. These are guys who bought into that culture and have victims. The journalist drops the lawyer off at the airport by driving through a fence onto the tarmac. The journalist then returns to Vegas to finish his article and then drives back to LA.
Can't believe you're defending this movie. You know what? We'll come back to this, all right? Because my brother also was like, I love that movie. And I'm like, I want to kill anyone that loves this movie.
I would never threaten to kill you over your movie beliefs.
It's hyperbole. I will say this, though. In the 70s, you could just do anything, and it seems that no one cared. People are driving right onto the tarmac of airports. You're breaking up casinos. No one gives a shit.
Yeah. Except for when he drives onto the sidewalk at that one hotel. They're like, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, but nobody said anything at the airport, which was
It's almost like the patterns of the world were so garish in the 70s that if you added to that chaos, no one seemed to notice.
Yeah.
You know?
They certainly didn't have the regulation.
No question. All right. Well done, Scott. As always, well done.
Thank you.
Now, because this is a director's trilogy, it's going to go a little bit different. I'm going to break down these 3 films for you, but there are actually no actors that have been in all 3 movies. So I thought we would just do a little bit of talking about Terry Gilliam and some of the things that we're seeing that were the same in all 3 of these movies. The Fisher King. I got to tell you, in 1991, this movie got a lot of buzz. People were impressed by Robin Williams' performance. It's a showy part, and it got a lot of notice at the time.
I mean, he's great.
This was Terry Gilliam's first non-Python movie that had no Monty Python characters at all. He wanted to move away from movies that had big budgets, like really big budgets. He had run into that problem with Baron
Munchausen,
which is considered to this day to be one of the biggest box office flops. It was budgeted at something around $50 million and made just a couple $1 million.
Yeah.
Fisher King doubled its money and, of course, received Academy Award nominations for Best Actor for Robin Williams, for Best Original Screenplay, for Best Score, Art Direction, and Best Supporting Actress, Mercedes Ruehl, and she won.
It's funny, I was going to say her character is sort of it's a precursor to Marissa Tomei in My Cousin Vinny, so it's funny that she...
Is that what you thought of?
Yeah, I did.
Because I thought of Cher in Moonstruck.
I did think of that too.
Okay.
My biological clock is ticking like this, and the way this case is going, I ain't never getting married.
You know, all right, the engagement is off.
In time, you will see that this is the best thing.
In time, you'll drop dead, and I'll come to your funeral in a red dress.
Very good reviews, and considered to this day to be a very well-made, very great entry into American film for Terry Gilliam. Then we got 12 Monkeys. Originally, he wanted Bridges for the Brad Pitt part. All right, so that's an example of him taking an actor that he likes and wanting to continue to use him.
Yeah.
All right, but he was kind of shot down for the Goins part, and Pitt wound up getting it. Now, at the time, Brad Pitt was not a big name when he was cast. But between the period of time he was cast and this movie was released, Interview with the Vampire came out, Seven came out, and Legends of the Fall came out. So suddenly the movie became a star vehicle for Brad Pitt, whereas it wasn't originally conceived that way.
Right.
And of course, Brad Pitt received an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor.
You know, I think I read somewhere that actually, I think he considered Johnny Depp for that role as well.
Is that right?
Oh, God! Oh, God! Oh!
He didn't know.
It also did great money. It was made for around $30 million and made about $170 million big-time good reviews. And it spawned a TV adaptation that was out from 2015 to 2018.
The film is inspired by a short French film called La Jetée, which I think means like the airport or the jetway. And it's like a half-hour film. I actually just watched it. Essentially, it's the same setup that he goes underground and all that stuff. But the whole thing is that he has the memory of seeing the person shot and the woman, but he can keep going back to the woman because his memory of the woman is so strong. He keeps popping up in this woman's life and like he kind of forgets himself and wants to live in that world. That's why he's chosen, and specifically because of the memory. Because
Really?
he has such a strong memory from that time period, they think they can use that to send him back.
Now that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's interesting too is the whole movie is done still images. Picture of the guy, picture of that, which makes the swapping through time a little smoother, I think. But,
Sure. So,
but worth a watch. If you like 12 Monkeys, give it a shot.
This is the story of a man marked by an image of his childhood.
which brings us into Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. This had been beaten around Hollywood for years and years. It's just like Confederacy of Dunces. It's a literary classic, but we haven't quite figured out how to make it into a film yet.
Yeah.
All right. For many years, it was in development. It was going to be an animation. Hunter S. Thompson had sold the rights to like his girlfriend for a couple of years, and she wanted to make it into an animation based on the guy that animates all of his books.
Ralph Steadman.
Right. Okay. And that fell through. Jack Nicholson, Marlon Brando were going to be in it. Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi. The reality is these people either died or got too old to play these parts.
Yeah.
All right. And then once Hunter S. Thompson involved himself in the process and saw Johnny Depp, he was like, it has to be made with Depp. He fell in love with Johnny Depp. And this whole thing got weird, man. Depp is spending time like in his house for like 6 months, wearing his clothes in the movie. Like, really?
Became very good friends.
Well, he's the one that paid for the funeral.
Right.
When Hunter S. Thompson, he said he wanted his ashes to be shot out of a cannon because
Yeah.
he was a big gun dude.
Yeah.
And Johnny Depp paid for it. I think it was even mentioned when they were talking about how Johnny Depp like was going bankrupt because of his extensive wine collection. They even mentioned it, like, and he paid for this funeral where a big $1 million cannon was built.
Yeah.
But unlike the other two movies, Scott, this was not popular. It wasn't successful. It got mostly bad reviews. It's been reconsidered now. I think some people perceive it as a cult film. And I think it's worth mentioning this has got a famous soundtrack too, full of 60s countercultural hits, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And songs related to Vegas.
Right.
Many of our trilogies have taken place in Vegas, right?
I was going to ask, we should really crunch the numbers.
Vegas, baby, Vegas!
So yeah, those are the three films. Those are the three films that make up Terry Gilliam's Americana trilogy.
Yes.
And Terry Gilliam is an interesting guy. First and foremost, he's the American member of the Monty Python crew. But he started off not so much as an actor, but he did all their graphics, all their visuals.
Right.
Cutouts and things like that.
He's a visual guy. You can just see things in the background and see there's a visual meaning to that.
So he did Holy Grail, and he was one of two directors. And this goes along with exactly what we're saying. He directed the visuals, the photography,
right?
Whereas Terry Jones worked with the actors. And then he does these two trilogies back to back, the Imagination trilogy and then our trilogy. Can you talk at all about the movies he's done since then? Did you see Brothers Grimm?
Yes, I did see the Brothers Grimm.
Now, what's that? Matt Damon and
Heath Ledger are the Brothers Grimm.
It wasn't good?
Not so good. Not so good. Probably my least favorite of his I've seen.
Okay, and then you have the Imaginarium.
I also saw that.
Of Dr.
Parnassus.
Now, I think that's most famous because Heath Ledger died in the making of the film, right? It's his last movie?
Yes. So, well, actually, I guess they had filmed quite a bit with him, but the movie is like, it's like the height of his craziness.
Okay.
Of Terry Gilliam, over the top, visually stunning kind of shit. He was also, before the Watchmen movie was made in 2008, I believe.
Okay.
He had wanted to take it and make it a 12-part miniseries because the comics are split into 12 issues.
Really?
And was going to do like a full like deep dive version of it. And I've never heard a better idea.
What happened to the American dream? It came true. You're looking at it.
Motifs, okay? We're talking big, bold visuals. That's what he's about.
Yeah.
He started that way with Monty Python, and that's continued throughout his work. And I mentioned it before, he really lets the characters kind of just go. You know, he doesn't really police his actors. He's not really directing them too hard. He lets them do what they want to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes to some great success, sometimes I think to their detriment.
Well, especially, if you have such a clearly defined world in the set design and the costuming as an actor, you eat that shit up. You've given me everything I need because you've built the world around me so specifically that, you're going to get pretty much what you want.
The grotesque, the supernatural. Dutch fucking angles.
How about new, you crazy Dutch bastard?
I love specifically I think it's like the opening shot, I think, of Fisher King, of him in the radio station, and you can clearly tell that's a built radio station that is like 8 times taller than it needs to be.
The way the shadows form against the wall, it looks like a prison cell for him. You see the bars. Yeah. You see it a little bit too with the insane asylums in the first 2 movies as well, between Fisher and 12 Monkeys. Those insane asylums look very much the same as well.
Yeah.
All of these set pieces are over the top, almost comical. In the asylum, you see these bright colors in the bed sheets contrasted against the white stark background.
And the pajamas always have to have like cartoon characters on them and stuff too.
And again, very Terry Gilliam, very kind of pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
You ready to rock into the Fisher King, mon frere?
Sure.
The Fisher King.
Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more.
What you say?
Trilogy superstar Jeff Bridges.
Iron Man. Always good to see Jeff Bridges.
Obadiah Stane in the first Iron Man.
I confuse Jeff Bridges with Jeff Daniels nonstop, and I know they're different actors. I know.
It happens.
And listen, we have to mention Robin Williams, obviously. He's a Trilogy superstar. He's a Knight of the Museum. We all have our favorite Robin Williams films. We're not going to go into Robin Williams. So instead, Scott, why don't you tell me a movie that you don't like that Robin Williams is the star of, where you're like, ugh, enough Robin Williams. Mine is Patch Adams.
Yeah. You know, I don't think there's a bad Robin Williams performance, but there are bad movies that he's in. And I think one of them is probably Toys.
Ooh, yeah.
I'm Robin Williams, and I want to open up to you a question and answer about the new movie Toys. Yes.
What the hell am I going to do?
Come on down. See Toys.
I don't understand.
Well, it's like Toys in the Hood.
You behave like a buffoon.
Thank you.
I feel like once we got older and were able to decode the Robin Williams technique of flitting from character to character.
Oh, hey, yo, I pity the fool.
Now I'm a preacher. You know, somebody's probably watching this right now, and they're like, oh my God, what the hell is it?
And you know, Scott, there's really a ton of actors in this film. Also, Mercedes Ruehl.
She had some very good lines.
I don't know that she did enough to get an Academy Award nomination from me.
That I didn't know, but
she did nothing after this movie. It's not like she parlayed this into a successful career. Because before this, she did Married to the Mob, and she did Big, of course. She played Tom Hanks' mother in Big.
Right.
And this was kind of her peak. After this, it was all downhill.
Also played the mother in Last Action Hero.
That's what I just said. All downhill.
Oh, I'm sorry to disappoint you.
David Hyde Pierce.
I was just going to say, David Hyde Pierce.
Kathy Najimy? Kathy
Najimy
has that cameo in the video store.
Who I know best from playing the one of the witches in Hocus Pocus.
And while we're talking about the actors, let's just finish it off with Michael Jeter. He was on the television show Evening Shade, the Burt Reynolds sitcom. But he's been in some big films as well.
That's not what I know him.
What do you know him from?
Biggest film role was probably in The Green Mile with Mr. Jingle.
He was also in Jurassic Park 3.
That's right, he is.
Trilogy superstar. Okay.
That is a forgettable movie.
Yes, it is. But I think he actually became famous from that Evening Shade show. But you know what?
Yeah.
That just illustrates that I'm older than you and I remember Burt Reynolds' sitcom.
Tell me about Evening Shade. Burt is a hit again. I mean, you got to feel terrific.
You say that like I'm a grain cracker or something.
No, I mean, I
wasn't finished in the business. I didn't totally washed up. I had my own game show.
Once we go 3 years later after the massacre at the Chinese restaurant, in the video store, there is a prominently displayed poster for Brazil.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I saw some video box covers that looked familiar to me, but that's egregious. Come on now.
While we're talking about those video boxes, they can't keep those things on the fucking shelves, can they?
Well, you have
every scene is like a
well,
bumbling.
The one scene where Robin Williams is pretending to work there and Amanda Plummer.
I love that scene.
It's two insane people. They can't. Don't stop touching it. Every video store had like slots. Why are these just kind of up on their side?
Yeah,
just free standing. That's not how that works.
And clearly empty.
Yeah, exactly. Come on.
Hagen's has over 24,000 movies to choose from, including all the latest new releases, your all-time favorites, and the largest collection of classic movies in the state. That's why everyone comes to Hagen's.
Do you have the movie Kingpin? I really like that movie.
You must have been excited. I know you're a big Tom Waits fan, and he had a
Yes.
little scene in this movie.
And I think it's one of the, honestly, it was the part I remembered most. It sets the theme of the movie of how we abandon our homeless people.
You've got more depth than me because all I perceived this as was another guy who is unclear when he talks. Why can't I understand anyone's words in this movie?
You know, they do have closed captioning you could just put on. I had to do it for Fear and Loathing,
It's
okay?
so funny you said that because Amy was begging me to put on closed caption for Fear and Loathing, and I didn't.
No, I mean, he's definitely in that character unintelligible.
Well,
That's
he's
the
famous
point.
for not being intelligible.
I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
There's a little kid who walks up to Jeff Bridges and gives him that Pinocchio doll.
Yeah.
Before he's attacked. Here you go, mister. Like, come on, take it. My grandmother gave me it. I don't want it.
No one wants a gift from
It doesn't
grandma.
even take batteries.
Yeah.
Why would I want this?
Because grandma inevitably asks mom what you want for Christmas. She gets it wrong. So it's like telephone.
Yeah.
It's telephone gifting, man.
It's the man at the store said this is the one everyone wants.
Yeah, wasn't that an episode of The Simpsons where Marge is like, everyone loves the Cavallo golf game?
The putting challenge.
That's
yeah.
right.
Your ball is in the parking lot.
Would you like to play again? You have selected no.
This scene where Jeff Bridges goes to commit suicide by tying these cinder blocks to his feet and then is interrupted and gets his ass kicked. But why wouldn't you just kill yourself? Why wouldn't you just jump in the water if these guys were going to come beat you up? You want to die. It just seemed like a weird thing. Like, oh no, some people are here. I better.
Oh no, he takes the time to like bend over and try and take off the cement blocks like he's
Yeah.
going to fight.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, wait a second. Let me take these off. I'm a jackass.
Just kick them with
He's
them.
like, I could obviously be beating you up right now because you're two dumb kids, but instead I've idiotically tied this to my leg.
People spend a lot of hard-earned money for this neighborhood. It's not fair. Looking out their windows to see your ass asleep on the street. Let the bum go, dipshit.
You know what I wrote down? And this is perhaps a motif of the Gilliam films, man ass. Now, I know we focused on man ass in Porky's.
And Da Vinci Code, if you'll remember our conversation
That's
about
right.
bare man ass. They like soap Bruce Willis's ass like 4 times in that movie.
Exactly. All the asses in these movies are shining. Don't tell me Robin Williams has such a beautiful ass.
I thought his ass looked a little dirty.
Interested? Very. Providing the information is good, and you stop soaping your ass.
Let's talk for a second about getting Amanda Plummer involved in Parry's world. If someone came to my job in drag and jumped on a table and started fucking singing, I'd be mortified.
Well, I think that's the idea, right? Because that's what I mean is the plan doesn't really make sense. The idea is to embarrass her until she finally comes down.
And gets her free video membership? What?
Yeah, I don't really get that.
I don't get it either.
Why wouldn't she come to the store and be like, hey, leave me the fuck alone?
Dude, Bridges
Why
was
is it
like,
just give me the thing.
Bridges was
Like,
like, look, she's obviously as moronic as this homeless guy, so let's just do something stupid. She'll show up.
yeah. Again, it's another instance too of Jeff Bridges using homeless people throughout this movie. So he uses one homeless person to embarrass
You're right.
himself to help another homeless person.
You're exactly right.
I had a dream for guess who, Lydia. It wasn't for her, Lydia. It's only for you, yes, Lydia.
Can I hear more versions of I Like New York in June?
There is a point where he's in the hospital and he's like, come on, like trying to orchestrate there. Like, I like New York in June to one guy, and the guy just goes, I'm in the wrong place.
Someone
I
needs
just died laughing.
Someone needs to say, look, these people are seriously ill. They are not going to sing with you.
Yeah.
Stop it. You're hurting them.
They're not all singers too. Maybe they have other strengths.
You're making their condition worse.
And it's getting worse.
I'm getting better.
You know, that whole Chinese food date, they're having the dim sum. There's a solid 2 minutes of like Robin Williams and Amanda Plummer playing with dumplings.
Yeah.
And didn't we just do this with Kung Fu Panda dumpling play?
Yeah. Well, he was much more elegant with his dumpling play.
I'm just saying that I thought that with Kung Fu Panda, we were done with dumpling play. Meanwhile, there's nothing easier to pick up with a fucking chopstick than a dumpling.
You are free to eat.
Am I?
Are you?
I will say too, I'll say this now anyway, not bring it up again later, but I feel like there's this overall abuse of women that happens in all these movies too. Like women aren't really taken seriously. For instance, Jeff Bridges basically abuses her by giving her no love when clearly she's fucking in love with him.
Sure.
And then you have 12 Monkeys. She's not taken seriously by the other Frank Gorshin, and 12 Monkeys doesn't take her seriously. And then the last one, obviously, like we talked about the Ellen Barkin scene and stuff like that. Kind of women just taken for granted, kind of just generally abused and used.
He thinks of all actors as device pieces.
Yeah, but I think these characters' relationships with women are flawed. It just seemed like it was a big theme to me. By the way, I realize at no point in this movie does he ever tell her, I'm homeless. Not once.
Is that right?
He wouldn't give me his number because he doesn't have a phone.
He's not married. He's poor.
There was a little moment after the date where she's like, oh, call me. And he goes, she didn't give me the number. And he does a little hand flick, like Groucho Marx style with the little cigar.
Yeah.
I was like, I just love little touches like that. Somehow being a psychotic homeless man is so charming.
But look at me. I've worked myself up from nothing to a state of extreme poverty. Now, what do you say?
When we finally see what happened in the restaurant, right, where his wife gets killed, and like she gets her head from the back blown through into his mouth almost.
It's horrifyingly jarring.
No wonder you went fucking crazy. I get it.
But in bright red blood in the Gilliam style.
Yeah.
And then when Bridges decides that he's going to get the Grail, can you explain to me why he dresses up as Parry to do it?
I had the same note.
And his fear and his way of doing it is to climb a rope. And
you know what I thought was interesting?
What is happening here?
It started to make me think, because as he's doing this, he's hearing horses. He's seeing all the things that Parry's saying. I'm like, it's the clothes. The clothes are what made him
They're
crazy.
cursed. Who wore those clothes?
He was fine when he was in that David Byrne suit.
Psycho killer, better.
I'd like to mention that once the Grail is returned to Robin Williams, and he's perfectly healthy, ready to stand, run around, his legs would not be able to...
They would have atrophied.
Right.
I wonder if he didn't get the cup and he just waited one more day. Would he have just come out of it anyway?
That's a good question.
You know?
And maybe just hand him anything.
Sure.
Walk into the room and grab the doorstop and be like, here's the Grail.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Thank you. Oh.
He chose poorly.
The very ending of this movie was such a light-hearted ending of them naked, laying in the grass.
The theory is if all else fails, sing this fucking song about New York and just hope for the best.
Yeah.
And that's what they went out with.
Yeah.
Okay, so on to 12 Monkeys.
I found my thrill on Blueberry Hill. On Blueberry Hill. I found you.
Trilogy superstar.
Who?
Bruce Willis.
I love that guy. We talked about him in depth when we did Look Who's Talking.
Yes.
Talked about him during the Oceans trilogy as a cameo.
Cameo there.
He's been in 2 other trilogies, the Unbreakable trilogy, then the Expendables.
Oh, yeah.
You guys aren't going to start sucking each other's dicks, are you?
And then, of course, Brad Pitt, a trilogy superstar,
Brad Pitt.
Oceans. But it's he's especially relevant now because he's the most recent winner of the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor.
That's right.
And I want to say that this was his first nomination for Best Supporting Actor. So we're coming full circle here.
Another case where I think Terry Gilliam really let him go and do whatever he
does
wanted.
that. He lets these actors just talk. And Robin Williams, you would think, does it the best. Brad Pitt's certainly not going to do any better with his crooked ass eye.
Well, I mean, and on the flip side, I think, Bruce Willis opened himself up to playing like a vulnerable role, which I don't think you'd ever really seen him do before.
This is his vulnerable period because he's vulnerable in Pulp Fiction too.
There's moments though in this movie you can really see that the character of James Cole is really still that little boy in a weird way. He turned off the tough guy, and that's weird for Bruce Willis, but it works.
Crazily, it's this thing called acting where performers can really play more than one type of part.
Well,
holy shit.
I can straighten this all out if I make a telephone call.
Who would you call? Who would straighten everything out?
The scientists. They'll want to know that they sent me to the wrong time.
Yeah, Frank Gorshin, the Riddler from the old Batman TV show.
I knew you'd get excited about that because it's Batman related.
Yes, I forgot he was in the movie.
I have nothing else to say about him. I just wrote Gorshin.
Time is getting short. We've got to get Batman before he gets us.
And since we're just kind of talking about the last of the famous actors in this one, Scott, Christopher Plummer.
Yes.
Another plumber.
I think that's pretty interesting.
Gilliam's got a thing for the plumbers.
Yeah.
They're weirdos.
They are.
He's kind of a weirdo, too. I thought he was English, but he's Canadian.
Really?
Yeah.
Sure.
Dude, he's Canadian. I looked it up. That's not an Englishman. Don't check my work. Don't look on your phone.
I'm not.
You are. You really are.
I'm answering a text message.
In the middle of the podcast?
Yes.
Believe me, you thought he was an Englishman too, right?
Of course I did.
He's not.
Canadian actor.
Yeah. I think everyone knows Christopher Plummer from The Sound of Music. That's his biggest role.
Yes.
Naturally, he's a famous. He's that Sound of Music? Thanks, Scott.
Edelweiss, bless my homeland forever.
Another trilogy, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I think they borrowed heavily from this plot device because in the first movie, the whole thing is that the reason this happens is they make a drug that's supposed to help with like Alzheimer's and they test it on the monkeys and it makes them like super intelligent, but it's deadly to humans. So at the end of the movie, there's this really great device where I thought the movie nailed the ending where they show a guy from earlier who got like bit or something. And it turns out he's an airline pilot. And they show him get in the plane, and then the credits are over this map showing him go to country and showing the outbreak happening.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about a contagion once again. In our last trilogy in Langdon, we dealt with one, and we're dealing with one again here.
Attention. Due to the extremity of the simian flu crisis, all regular government functions have been suspended indefinitely.
I thought it was pretty funny when he's escaping, and he sees that security guard reading tabloids, and he's reading like Bat Boy.
Weekly World News, Bat Boy, classic.
Which I think is kind of a funny, again, another funny visual touch to be like, you don't believe my shit, but you're going to believe that shit?
Hold me, Bat Boy, touch me, Bat Boy, help me through the night.
And we see Chris Maloney in this film too.
Yes.
Chris Maloney plays a cop later on. He's a trilogy superstar, as you know. He's in Harold and Kumar.
That's right.
And he's going to go on to play a small, effeminate part in Fear and Loathing.
Yes.
You fuzzy little shithead!
When they're in the car, after Bruce Willis kidnaps Madeline Stowe, and they're listening to the radio, and he's like, oh, can you turn this up? Can you turn this up? They do a close-up of her touching the radio, and clearly she changes the station from like 90-something to 100 and something, and then all of a sudden it turns up and it's fucking Blueberry Hill or whatever playing.
Wait a second. We know how radios work. You can't fool us.
So we had Tom Waits in the last movie actually playing a role in the movie, and in this movie we have a Tom Waits song playing as they travel to Philadelphia.
Which song is it?
It is a song titled "The Earth Died Screaming."
Oh, this song here.
The earth died screaming, while they're dreaming. The earth died screaming, while they're dreaming.
Oh, that song.
That's the one.
That song. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I make love to that song a lot.
So he sees all those homeless people, and one of the homeless guys is like, "Hey, you're one of us." To that, but I was like, "Are we to believe that all homeless people are just lost time travelers?"
Gilliam doesn't have any sense of what homeless people are really like. In this one too, he has like a homeless
They
guy.
have this real camaraderie.
They're dressed in like costumes, and this one there's a guy preaching. Can someone let the filmmakers of the world know that no one's stood at the corner and held up a sign that says that the end is nigh in 25 fucking years?
Yeah.
Stop it.
The end is near! We are all gonna die!
Honestly, he could have made it out of this whole thing if he hadn't made that phone call. That last phone call he makes really that's how they find him and they give him the gun. If they hadn't done that, so it's really his fault. So he deserves it.
Jesus, that's pretty grim, Scott. Okay.
David Morse, who is the scientist who has stolen the vials and is about to release them, is going through security checkpoints. He goes through all that stuff. And my favorite thing, I think about it all the time, and I don't know why. It doesn't even have a smell. And the guy's like, that's fine, sir. You don't have to do that. I just find it so fun. I think about it all the time, and I don't know why.
Really?
Yeah. I was waiting too at the fucking, as he's leaving, and he's like, oh, hold up there before he lets him go. And he's like, and he holds up like a pair of Speedos. And I don't know why I thought, how'd you like to see me in these?
But let me ask you something. What do you think of this?
Wow. And you know what the saddest part of this whole movie is?
What?
Is that little Bruce Willis never gets to go on his trip, right? After that happens, they walk back. The last shot is you see the family walk back out to the car and get in. He looks up at the plane flying away. Either they canceled the flight or they thought, like, we got to take the kid home. He's all shook up. He just watched a man die.
Where were they going? Maybe the kid should have been wearing some Mickey ears, and maybe a bullet could have winged off of one of the ears.
Just a splatter of blood onto the face, on the ears.
And now that we're all together, I've got a surprise for you.
And I think Bloody Mickey Ears is as good a transition as any.
Into Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Scott?
Yes.
I hear the cottonwoods whispering above. Tammy, Tammy, Tammy's in love.
What kind of rat bastard psychotic would play that song right now at this moment?
Let's start with the actors. First, we got Johnny Depp, of course. He's a Trilogy superstar, believe it or not. He's got a small part in Platoon, part of the Oliver Stone Vietnam trilogy, another director's trilogy. What do you like that he's been in?
I like him in Donnie Brasco.
Great movie. Good one.
Good movie. He's very good. I
And
think
great book. He's Tim Burton's boy.
Edward Scissorhands I like. My favorite Tim Burton movie, though, with him is Ed Wood. I think that's where he really gets to be, instead of being, some nightmarish caricature, he's, a real person.
I like to dress in women's clothing. Panties, sweaters, pumps. It's just something I do.
It's almost like he's an example of a professional wrestler who lets his character take over his life.
I don't think he likes being Johnny Depp very much.
Yeah.
He doesn't just willy-nilly do every movie.
You know what? If you hadn't
know?
mentioned Donnie Brasco, I might have been like, fuck Johnny Depp. But Brasco is really good.
I got you. You know what I will say? I don't think he's very good when he's playing straight. I think when he is playing a character and he immerses himself, I enjoy that because I like to watch the process of becoming that.
Sure. I think since we're talking about the actors in this, we also have to mention Benicio del Toro.
Trilogy superstar Benicio del Toro.
We're talking Thor here. What was the other one?
He's in episode 8 of the Star Wars sequels.
Fascinating that in a movie where you can barely understand what Johnny Depp is saying, we would cast one of the most incomprehensible actors in Hollywood to act right along with him.
Usual Suspects, they made it a character thing, really, but that's just him.
Number 3, step forward.
How many keys, you cocksucker?
In English, please.
Excuse me.
In English.
How many fucking keys, you cocksucker? What the fuck?
I do like him as Frankie Four Fingers in Snatch.
Okay.
Brad Pitt also in that movie, unintelligible.
But you know what? Honestly, with Fear and Loathing, you have to get used to the rhythms of their high talk. After a while, you kind of get it.
Yeah.
It's almost like Clockwork Orange, where once you get the droogish talk, you absorb it without thinking about it.
How art thou, thou globby bottle of cheap, stinking chip oil?
The rest of the actors are mostly cameos. There are no other important actors.
Trilogy superstar Tobey Maguire.
Of course, he's Spider-Man in Raimi's Spider-Man, but I don't know what he's doing in this movie. He's just some guy in the back seat.
Exposition device.
I'm Spider-Man. No more. No more.
Mini-me, Vern Troyer with a little...
Yes, Trilogy superstar.
I said a little cameo, and boy, is it a little cameo.
I do want to point out that in every one of these movies, there is a little person.
A dwarf. I mean, hey, they find their way into these trilogies. Ask an Ewok. Scott, for me, and we could just disagree through this entire thing, but this is an example of being around someone else who's on a drug that you're not on, and because you're not on it, they're annoying. Because they're talking about grandiose theories of the world and what everything means, and you're like, shut the fuck up.
They are mixing back and forth pretty heavily with different kinds of drugs. So this is, honestly, watching it, it's beyond my experience.
Oh no, I don't. Listen, I'm. It's beyond mine too. But I'm just saying, it's still annoying. If you saw these guys, you'd be annoyed with them.
And most of the people in the movie are.
Hey, want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
I don't think it's a comment on the hippie culture, Scott, as much as it's a comment on excess, an American excess. If we're talking about the American trilogy, this is a perfect example of taking things to the goddamn limit, especially later on in the film when they're like, yeah, we spent an average of how much on room service every hour.
But in a lot of ways, too, I think this is the most poetic part of the entire movie, and you can tell that it's straight up Hunter S. Thompson.
There was a fantastic universal sense that whatever we were doing was right, that we were winning. And that, I think, was the handle. That sense of inevitable victory over the forces of old and evil. Not in any mean or military sense. We didn't need that. Our energy would simply prevail. We had all the momentum. We were riding the crest of a high and beautiful wave. So now, less than 5 years later, you can go up on a steep hill in Las Vegas and look west. And with the right kind of eyes, you can almost see the high water mark. That place where the wave finally broke and rolled back.
Like, it's just an incredibly poetic sum up of how useless all of that was.
And I respect
you know what I mean?
that. I respect that if I'm reading it in a book. I just don't know that sentiment translates on film.
If it weren't for this movie, there are a huge number of people who would have no fucking clue who Hunter S. Thompson is. So I think in a lot of ways, it's kind of a service to his life and his work. It's something like I would compare to, you ever seen like Mulholland Drive? Is a David Lynch film that seems completely unconnected and is just like short scenes basically, but there apparently is some sort of deeper connection that's like impossible to really get.
Man's attitude goes some ways, the way his life will be. Is that something you might agree with? Sure.
The police convention. You can hear some cops talking about how they gave him hell at Kent State.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, too.
It's pretty hardcore.
Again, bringing that, I thought was interesting because, especially we're talking about this now, I think there is a bit of like a protest culture angle.
Well, I think you're making a relevant point that right now we're seeing what comes closest perhaps to what existed in the late 60s.
Yeah, except it's much more angry and hurt and scared. Whereas I feel like in the 60s, there was it was the summer of love.
As more bodies started coming back from Vietnam, that mindset changed in a big way.
Yeah.
So I think now we're seeing closer to what it was like when we were really able to pressure the government to get out of Nam. Like, look, thousands of people are dying.
Nobody wants this. You're supposed to be representing us.
Exactly.
Twin soldiers and Nixon coming. We're finally on our own. This summer I hear the drumming. For dead in Ohio.
I was shocked that it took an hour and 20 minutes for us to see someone puke in this movie. And then it's like they open the floodgates. Then Benicio's puking every 5 minutes.
Worth the wait. Come on.
It's the best acting he's doing in this movie.
Yeah, it's great. I wanted to see his belly button 6 more times. Thank God.
Watching people get sick always makes me sick. And frankly, so does talking about it. So, wow.
I got a few lines here that I think just made me laugh hard, and I'd like to mention them. Once he's done the adrenochrome or whatever, and he's looking at him, and Benicio's becoming that like beast creature in his mind, and all of a sudden he's got all those tits on the side of him. Beautiful fucking tits, man. Oh, when they're attacking that maid where he's like, what's your name? He's like, Alice. Like, prove it. And he shows him the name tag. Like, okay.
It's not unusual to be loved by anyone. It's not unusual to have fun with anyone. But when I see you hanging about with anyone, it's not unusual to see me cry. I wanna die.
All right, we've come to the end of another trilogy, my friend.
We've done it.
There was some discord this time around, but we completed it.
But cooler heads prevailed.
Yes, they did. And when I think of a cool head, I certainly think of Phil.
I knew you were going to say that.
Okay, I'm lying. That's the last thing I think of.
He may not have the coolest head, but he might be our only hope in this situation. We figured out a way that we can send Phil back in time to try and stop the coronavirus.
Yes, we did.
The results are mixed.
Here's what happened.
Hey folks, Phil here, your field correspondent for the Trilogy podcast.
I'm here for Terry Gilliam's Americana trilogy, and I'll be tasked with traveling through time and stopping a worldwide pandemic from occurring. Bit of a tall order. I've been sent some sort of time travel apparatus by Vin and Scott that will reportedly send me back to the last year so I can gather information about the virus's spread. Well, no time like the present. It's a little time travel humor for you. Okay, let's do this. Whoa, I think it's working. Whoa. Wait, where am I? I'm on a boardwalk. And there's the ocean. I'm at the Jersey Shore. Wait, why are so many people wearing Michael Jordan jerseys? Oh, God. I'm in the 90s. Oh, look at all the people just living their lives without a care in the world. Everyone crowded together and no one wearing a mask. So, just like the present day Jersey Shore. Smell that air. Man, this is bringing back so many memories. Especially that time I saw that man get run over by the tram that drives up and down the boardwalk, but that couldn't be today. Wait. Oh my God, there I am. It's young me. Oh no. That means... Oh dear God. Oh my God.
You got hit. Call 911.
Oh my God! That man just got run over by the tram car. I will be haunted by this memory for the rest of my life.
Whoa, that was the most fucked up thing I've ever seen.
I've seen worse. Like the time I watched two frat guys shank a hobo.
Wait, young Scott and young Vin, what are you guys doing here?
Dude, you shouldn't know who we are yet.
Yeah, we haven't met yet.
You're right.
Relax, we know you're a time traveler. We are too.
Have you pulled your teeth out yet? Here, I'll help you.
What? No!
Come on, Phil.
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 Come on, snap out of it, Phil.
Come on, Phil.
Hey, come on. Hey, we just brought you back from the dentist. You're home from the dentist. Hey. You're home. Boy, he is really out of it.
Well, he had to have 3 root canals. I think they gave him some pretty heavy-duty drugs.
You stay away from my teeth! I'll kill you!
Okay. Time to go?
Yep.
Gonna get a creamsicle and plug it in my teeth.
Why did you trust Phil? I mean, don't you know better at this point?
It was kind of just a guinea pig, honestly. You think I want to send myself back in case something happens?
All right, well, we gave it a shot. And we gave this trilogy a shot. It's another director's trilogy. These are kind of tricky, Scott. We don't do them very often.
Yeah.
And we kind of have to approach them from a different angle, but we got through it. I'll go first this time around. I think you went first last time.
Sure.
In terms of breaking these bad boys down.
Sure.
Okay. Whereas I think this is a good, very good representation of Terry Gilliam as a director. I just disliked the third movie so much I cannot call it a successful trilogy. So for me, this is unsuccessful. 2, 1, 3.
I obviously am going to say I think it is a successful trilogy. These are his 3 most successful movies.
No doubt about that.
This was like the hottest part of his directing career. I think they do sort of gel well. I mean, definitely the first 2 movies are much more similar, but I think it fits. I think it works for the Americana thing because we are getting this, while we are getting these 2 fantasy stories set in America, the third one is not a fantasy. So it's a switch up for sure. So I will give my order. And I think actually I'm going to end up giving the exact same order and say it's a 2-1-3. But I got to give it to Robin Williams because it was a delight to. I hadn't watched a movie since he passed.
Scott.
It was nice to see him again, and it was emotional, but not in the way that I expected. I expected it to be sad, but I was not.
This is a new one for us where we agree on the order, but disagree on whether it was successful or not. All right, doing different things.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to us yet again. My name is Vin. I'm running the Instagram, and I really try and match the Instagram posts daily with what we've talked about in this month's episode.
And I am Scott, of course, and I run the Twitter. We do some fun polls about our current episode, so check that out and interact with us.
Folks, things are changing. Can you hear it? Things are getting better. Right? It's not so bad out there.
No, you know what? You've convinced me. It really is a wonderful world.
I I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky.